So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the quarterly meeting. Hello, everybody. So, traditionally, we start with the personnel of the Thermador Groupe, and we've got some good news. There are more of us now. And this is often a question that comes up. Investors ask us, shareholders ask us if we're managing to recruit. And the good news is that we've managed to recruit 30 people over the course of the quarter. So from 684, we've moved up to 714. So welcome to all the newcomers. There are many young people, which is great to see. It's lovely to see these young people in the Thermador Groupe. Hopefully they will have a long career. We really had to recruit these new people for months, for years. Our teams have been working very hard. And so we really needed more people to guarantee our future. So the activity in the third quarter. So as anticipated, we've got growth, but it's slowed down. Remember that in the first quarter and the second quarter, the growth was really quite exceptional. We're coming back now to a level of growth that's more normal, let's say, at 5.4% for the third quarter. It's interesting to look at the growth in relation to 2019, and we can see that it's quite substantial. 2 years ago, it was 16.6%, which is quite remarkable given our professions. If you look at the graph on the slide, organic growth for the group for several quarters since 2017, you can see what it looks like. You can see how extraordinary the first 2 quarters of this year have been, especially the second quarter 2021. So during this second quarter 2021, our customers, they anticipated on their orders, and this can be reflected in the turnover in favor of the second quarter, but undermining the third quarter. So the second quarter 2021 is really a record that will be difficult to beat. And we've sent out the Shareholders Letter number 104 for the coming half year. It will be difficult because the base effect will be very high. So that's it for organic growth in the third quarter. What about in terms of totals and if we look at things simply? So you have everything according to subsidiaries in the letter. We've got the different channels, the DIY channel, the consumer channel, and the professional channel. So the consumer channel in the third quarter set the pace. It's true for the total, but you can see on this table that the consumer channel over 2 years has gone up by 26%, which is quite remarkable. And it's also what we're seeing with the professional channel. We're seeing quite a good upswing over the past 2 years with great progress in 2021. So at the start of the crisis, the situation was difficult. The professional channel helped us out. And finally, we've got great results for the last 2 years. So between the professional channel and the consumer channel, we've got quite a good balance. We're looking at 78% on the professional channel and 22% for the consumer channel. Now, in the shareholders' letter, we'll come back to the previous slide. In the shareholders' letter, you can see that there's one company with extraordinary performance at the moment, and that is the oldest company, created in 1978, Thermador. This company is in a great position when it comes to the energy renovation market. Just to give you an idea of the progression, so the turnover is 20 million in terms of growth, which is remarkable. It's exceptional. So well done to the Thermador teams, because the company will be finishing the end of the year as the best company in terms of the result. So that's thanks to all the work. We've got a great portfolio of suppliers and customers. So well done, Thermador, for that exceptional performance. So what about markets? Let's have a look at the indicators that we usually follow. So there's the Brico-Brief indicator that reflects the DIY channel, and no surprise there. As planned, we knew that the DIY activity that was in a slight decline. There'd been so much growth since 2020, after all. So on the right-hand side of the table, in August, the figure is negative, and that explains the poorer performance in the B2B field, especially for sanitary heating, represented by the FNAS. You can see that everything has been in the green since June 2020. So 2021 will be an exceptional year in these fields. At the end of the August, you can see that the total for the FNAS is showing almost 30% growth, which is absolutely remarkable and really exceptional. Just a few words about new housing and the new housing activity in France. So this new housing activity for the group only represents 8 to 9% of the consolidated activity of the group. But it's true that, as we often say, that when buildings are going well, this leads to many things in the new housing sector. So you can see this on the curve. You've got lots of building permits that have been applied for. You can see that there's a great boost in building permits. Maybe we will exceed the 5,000, which is always an important objective. But look at the curve just below. So 1,000 construction sites. So we've got construction sites that are finding it difficult to follow the awarding of building permits, so that there is a problem of labor and material today. So Patricia, can you tell us a little bit about the highlights for the third quarter? Yes, as you said, you talked about the results of Thermador, which is our legacy company. So the subsidiary is making the most of the energy renovation movement. So this has been the case for several years now. So we've got confirmation of the MaPrimeRénov' mechanism that's been confirmed with 2 billion euros that has been confirmed for individual houses, for energy renovation in individual houses. We also have the energy savings certificate financed by energy suppliers, so EDF, GRDF, or Total, for example, representing 4 billion euros. So we've got the financing. So we've also got the tertiary housing sector that is active. But from there to spend everything, the installers will have to be able to install, and maybe there will be a lack of resources and a lack of materials. So this does give us some visibility for the market. Then, with respect to other highlights, you already mentioned this at the end of June. So via the Brico-Brief, there's a decline in the consumer channel for the third quarter. There's been a drop of 10% in the turnover. So this concerns Mecafer, Domac, Dipra and Rousseau. And there are other highlights concerning the increase in container prices. So transport from Asia, that's still very high. So the prices will remain high through to the end of December 2021, and very certainly for the first half year of 2022, perhaps with some improvements at the end of the Chinese New Year, end of January 2022. Now, concerning the increase in prices, since the start of the year, we've seen some considerable increases among our suppliers. These are reflected among what our customers are seeing. So we'll look at the impact on our sales margin in the first half year 2022. Concerning our stock, we wanted to provide a bit more information about the value of our stock at the end of September. So we communicated based on the quarterly results. So we were building up the stock again mechanically. We've got enough. We're building up the stock. However, there are additional delivery delays because of our supplies in Asia. But 2/3 of our procurements actually come from Europe. So the exposure with these additional delays that can take us up to 7 additional months affects 1/3 of our purchases. So this is effectively linked to what's happening in China, because we're in close relationship with our Chinese suppliers, and they're announcing factories closing 2, 3, 4 days a week. So that creates tension in terms of purchases from Asia. So we wanted to provide more indications, because this can have repercussions on our delivery times for our customers. In our shareholders letter, we wanted to underline the number of references with a delayed delivery time. So that represents 1,400 references out of a total of 80,000. So that represents a turnover for a full year of 4.5%. So it doesn't represent lost turnover. It represents turnover that is kind of shifted, and we need to make some proposals to our customers with alternative products, because we have ranges that allow us to do this. We also have the understanding of our customers. They understand that there may be additional delays given the shortages that there are, and these procurement delays are being tried and tested by us and by our customers. I just wanted to remind you of something, the amount of investments, because we're often asked what the amount of our investments will be in 2021. So we announced 13 million. We're going to stick to that. 8 million corresponds to real estate investments. So it's a very strong year in terms of investments, and I will talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the projects. The rest is linked to investments in our subsidiaries. We've got an IT project, and then changes to equipment and more conventional types of investment. Now, some information about prospects, short-term prospects, long-term prospects. You know that in the Thermador Groupe, long-term prospects mean in 10 years' time, at the start of the year. In our reference document, we mentioned our wish, our ambition to double the size of the group over the next 10-year period. And it's clear that 2021 is going to allow us to see things in a more serene way. So over the course of the year, we've got ahead. We've made progress. But we mustn't expect in 2022 to see considerable growth. because the first half year, as I said earlier on, the first half year is going to be very difficult to equal. So what we have to keep in mind is growth over several years. That's what we're interested in the Thermador Group. Now, talking about the end of the year, our intuition is that the sales margin will be slightly eroded. We're going to, be subjected to this wave of price increases, the increased prices of materials that we're receiving, a strong impact on cost prices. Therefore, we haven't really extended this effect to all of our customers. So there will be a slight effect on the sales margin. Now, you've had some great results, as you will have seen, and these will act as a basis for the overall results in terms of turnover, but also operating profit. Now, as Patricia said, the building energy renovation movement is a great driver for the group over the next few years. So Prime Minister Jean Castex gave us a great announcement, 2 billion in terms of renovation bonuses. I think the government will continue this effort over several years. We have a 5-year commitment. Hopefully that will be honored because it will help us with making energy savings over a long period. Now, what can we sell for energy renovation? So accessories for heat pumps. Heat pumps today are very popular among the French population for new housing or older housing, or for fuel boilers or gas boilers, but also solid fuel boiler accessories, which are used in many rural areas in France. So, accessories are needed for such boilers. So we have these accessories, but we also have hydraulic solar panels. So not photovoltaic panels, but hydraulic panels. So you have water circulating. So this system is a highly efficient system if it's well developed. It's very efficient. It's very economical. So we are also able to sell dual flow mechanical ventilation systems. And in our ranges, we also have radiating ceiling panels and cooling panels, which can be a great alternative to air conditioning, especially in well-insulated housing units. So in the future, we can offer an energy-saving solution for buildings. So it's an alternative to air conditioning. So we can really be full players of energy renovation in the future. So for these products, we really have lots of. But yes, all of these products are European. So as we cited in the shareholders letter, we have the suppliers who are supporting us, who are investing, who believe in our projects. They're innovative. Now, Califi, we often refer to them. We also have Cordivari, an Italian manufacturer of buffer tanks, who works alongside us and is investing in its production capacities. There's DAB, the company that sells circulators, but also pumps. So it's the second partner of the group that's also investing in innovative products. There's Zilmed, an Italian manufacturer of expansion valves. And I cited the double flow mechanical ventilation systems made by Fortis, which is an Italian company again. So I'll finish with Acum, that supplies tubes. You're perhaps familiar with it. And it also has a business in radiating ceiling panels. So it's important to underline that these suppliers are European or French, and they don't present any risks in terms of their ability to deliver products. Now, internationally, we're seeing things with a smile on our faces because, again, people can go and visit their customers. And this means that our growth can be more dynamic on the international scene, and that's important for Sivco, our subsidiary. This subsidiary has always had double-figure growth, and we were hoping that we would be able to see that habit being taken back up again over the coming months. Patricia, what about other perspectives? What about structuring projects? Well, structuring projects, I was talking about investments, real estate investments, and in our 2021 projects, we had two important projects, in fact, three, because we had a project, ILO, with a building, and that dates back to April 2021. We also have Acceler that has an office project for the end of the year, and LG Inox, which will be moving its supply chain platform to Saint-Quentin-Fallavier with 5,500 square meters with a logistics equipment that is automated. So it's an investment for the SCI and for FG Inox. In terms of other projects, there's the Dipra-Rousseau project. So these two entities, since they're in their second year of working together, they've got one single director now. There's a management committee that is made up now. The next step for 2022 will be the migration of Rousseau in terms of its ERP system. It will be migrating to our ERP, and then there will be the legal status. There will be a legal entity, a new legal entity that will be set up. PB Tube, Thermacome, these are two subsidiaries that have worked together on an offer, on the radiating panel offer, and then I have a sales offer. PB Tube and Thermacome can therefore sell this offer to their customers, and they have a lot of synergy when it comes to logistics and storage. So PB Tube can store things for Thermacome. I don't know if you want to add anything to that with respect to PB Tube and Thermacome. Well, it's an acquisition that we made during the first lockdown, in fact. So it was quite acrobatic, let's say. But we're very satisfied with the progressive integration of Thermacome inside the group. It's something that's doing well. The two former competitors are now sister companies. They're working hand in hand in a sector that has a promising future. So, you know, with hindsight, we are very happy that this happened. It's great to have Thermacome. And the relations between customer and supplier are great. I was talking about the commercial offer for PBT Thermacome, the fact that these two companies have come together, that they've worked on a shared sales offer for radiating ceiling panels. This means that they can focus on individual houses, but also collective housing. So between the two, they can go further, probably. Yes, this was one of the aims of the operation. It was really to be stronger in order to develop these innovative solutions. So radiating ceiling panels is an emerging market. It's a niche market, but it is destined to develop further. These two companies will invest more, will develop a comprehensive range for individual houses, collective housing, and the tertiary sector. And that's what we're doing, so that we can cover all needs. Now, in the other projects, what about the prospects for 2021? So we worked on a complete carbon footprint at the end of December 2021. we will know what our product life cycle is. So we're talking about 80% of our carbon footprint. The objective is to communicate the figure and to work on action plans in partnership with our suppliers, because it's all about what kind of materials you use when you're manufacturing. And we'd like to thank the 4 teams who worked on this project, Jecli, Thermador, PB-Tube, and Sferaco, because this represented an additional investment, but also there was this expectation on behalf of investors and shareholders, and we will be able to continue our efforts with our policy and our strategy linked to the climate challenge and our ambition to reduce our carbon footprint. We had to have figures, we had to have a methodology and concrete action plans. So, we talk about energy renovation. That's positive for the environment, obviously. We always talked about the importance of the after-sales service in the Thermador Group, and it's true that this is important for our products. And in our carbon footprint, we will take the impact of the after-sales service into account and the positive impact of our products in terms of energy reductions. And then there is stock and procurement prospects. There's a certain amount of tension on procurements from China. 1/3 of our purchases are concerned. So we need to be careful about that. We need to keep an eye on what's happening. The delays, the delivery times are getting longer. We've been working with some Asian suppliers for a long time. That gives us additional strength. But then we've got our financial structure, which is solid. We have a good reputation. We're seen as being able to accompany and to pay on time. We have this, we're seen as a good company. This allows us to better negotiate with our suppliers. But it's one of the things that we have to look out for the end of the year and the start of the next year. So we've got to keep an eye on the stock. Okay, so we can now move on to the questions, maybe. But first of all, I'd like to thank the 73 people who are following us. Thank you for being part of the webinar. It's very touching to see that you're with us. There's Geneviève and Hubert who are present. They're 2 founders of the group. So that's really important for us. It's a powerful symbol. They're shareholders, but they're interested in what we're doing. They often send us encouraging messages or messages of thanks. So it's up to us to thank them this evening because they're there with us this evening. I've also seen that Hervé Le Guillaume and Jean-François Bonnefond, who was the general manager, the delegate general manager of the Thermador Groupe. So they're 2 happy retirees, or at least I hope they're happy. Thank you for being present. I won't cite everybody who's present, everybody who belongs to the group, but if you look at the panel, there are employees, former directors, founders, but also shareholders, and some very important shareholders, because we have some of the biggest shareholders in the group. So thank you for your support and thank you for listening. It's really, it makes us very happy. So Mr. Tricono, can you specify your question? You're asking why we're talking about the figures for the end of June. I said that they were important figures, but the aim of this evening is to comment on the figures for the end of September. So the figures in the shareholders letter number 104. Perhaps we didn't express ourselves properly, but those were the figures that we're talking about. Now, why do we publish our figures in IFRS accounting standards? Because we are on the regulated market. It's an obligation. If we had the choice, we would not use the IFRS standards because it makes the accounting quite complex. And I'm now going to hand over to Patricia for the IFRS standards because, I'm not an expert and it's quite technical. And I think she will explain to you the difference between the IFRS standards and the questions that were being asked, the 15, 16, that are not the normal standards. Yeah, so the IFRS 15, we report our turnover according to IFRS 15 that determines the way we recognize our turnover. So it's the IFRS 15 impact concerns advertising participation, so what we pay our customers, showcases where invoiced, our customers invoice for this. So that's the impact of IFRS 15. So the turnover is reported according to that standard. So it specifies how we determine our turnover. IFRS 16 concerns the assets that are rented. So when we have a lease, for example, this is the case of FG Inox. They are renting their buildings. And so according to IFRS 16, we have to report the fact that this represents an asset. The value of the building is an asset. So it's two different things, if you like. There's IFRS 16, that's something that we see at the end of the year in the overall report, and IFRS 15 concerns mainly the turnover. Now, if we use the French accounting standards, there would be some really big differences in terms of the group's results, the operating profit, things like that. Well, in terms of the results, yes, I'm just trying to wake Patricia up. In terms of the result, the impact of the IFRS is very limited. It's something like 10,000 euros, so not very much. However, in terms of our overall statement, because we follow IFRS, this has a bigger impact because we recognize the value of the assets of the buildings that we rent out. So it can represent quite a slightly bigger impact compared with the debt and assets. I think it's something like 10 million euros, the impact. So that's the biggest difference between the two. Now, a question from Jean-Pierre. So hello, Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre is a shareholder who is very familiar with the Thermador Groupe. And so it's a very specific question. What are the CapEx 2022-23 budgets? We haven't defined the budgets yet for these 2 years. We work on the budgets in January. So intuitively, I think we will stay with a high level of investment because the subsidiaries need buildings, the subsidiaries need IT tools. These needs are quite considerable. And so that's why I believe that we will stay with quite high levels. Probably not far from 10 million euros next year. But, it's just me saying that. Perhaps Patricia has another opinion on the subject, but it would be interesting to see, what the subsidiary investment projects are. In February, perhaps we'll have something a bit more precise. Well, I will just add, with respect to real estate, 2021 was a big investment year because we invested for ILO, Exceler, and Inox. So saying that we're going to reproduce the 8 million euros in 2022 for real estate, I don't think it will be that level. So there will be other investments in the subsidiaries that will be focused more on automation in the warehouses, for example. Now, with respect to the real estate projects, we talk about the Thermador subsidiary. Thermador is seeing a lot of growth in its turnover. It needs stock. It's the subsidiary which is in the oldest building. And so, a study has been launched We're going to define the needs of this subsidiary and see how we can accompany them and help them with their growth. A question from Mr. Soz. I don't know whether it's Soz or Sozé. Let's say Soz. So what about the impact of the pandemic on the company? So I'll go through this very quickly. Like any company in France, during the first lockdown, the impact was very high. It was the opportunity for us to communicate on a regular basis about the impact on the turnover. Thank goodness there was an upswing that happened afterwards. And so we were able to applaud the involvement of our teams, the quality of our stock. We were able to make the most of that upswing. And then we finished the year 2021 with an upswing in the turnover, which we hadn't anticipated. If you take the organic growth plus the external growth that we had in 2020, we're looking at a 7% growth in turnover. So since in 2021, we've had some extraordinary growth. So the Thermador Groupe, I would say, as the founders often said, generally speaking, it really does know how to be resilient and to make the most of any kind of situation. So what about procurements and the fact that there's a certain amount of tension on Chinese procurements? Is it that going to lead us to reposition procurements in Europe? Well, yes, it might lead us to reposition procurements in Europe, but the end user, whether we're talking about an individual or an industrialist, has to accept to pay the difference in price because there are differences between European materials and Chinese or Asian materials. So there are all these problems to be taken into account. And then there's this profound respect that we have for partners. Whatever the nationality, they've come a long way with us. That we're not going to let them go, even if they're Chinese, at the slightest drop of a hat. And a question about the buyback of shares. In our resolutions, we've planned for this, the buyback of shares. For the moment, there's no plan that's been defined for 2021. No. So we did buy some additional shares because there was an operation, free shares for ILO and Acceler. This was done at the end of June 2021. Are there others planned? Well, for the moment, we don't know. We haven't really anticipated. So the question was, are we going to buy shares and then cancel them? So these operations they please shareholders like Apple shareholders, but we're a medium-sized company. We need to have cash. We need shareholders to be able to sell shares easily, to buy shares, to sell them easily. So that might be one of our handicaps today. Some tell us that we're not liquid enough. You know, there aren't enough shares to buy and sell every day to attract big investors. But that's not our objective in the medium and in the short and medium term, to withdraw and dry up the market, which needs more cash. Sorry, I forgot to answer Jean-Pierre's question. Let me come back to external growth. So have we got more appetite for external growth? Well, you know, for 2 years, we committed to not carry out any external operations, and we focused on the integration of the companies that had recently arrived in the group. So that 2-year period ends at the end of the year. And so, yes, we want to make acquisitions, but at the same time, we've got to make acquisitions that are part of the group's strategic framework at an affordable price. the future companies have to be suitable, and the ones that we're interested in, well, hopefully that they have to want to sell. So there will be external growth in 2022, but moderate growth probably. A question about the value of our stock. So we're looking at 130 million, so an increase. The question, how many months does that represent? Well, usually for Italian suppliers or European suppliers, it's 3 to 4 months of stock that we're talking about. But for Asia, it's more like 6 months. So we wanted, we could communicate based on the number of days, but from a communication point of view, we weren't able to do this. So it's above 4 months, let's say. So we'll give you this precise information at the end of the year. But let's reason the opposite way around. The objective is to deliver customers, to deliver the products that are in the catalogue, to satisfy our customers. That's the primary objective. As Guy Vincent was saying, we don't want to be out of stock in the group. So we're setting on that objective, the level of stock and the consequence of the objective. So we trust our subsidiaries. They will stick to the objective and be disciplined in the way they manage their stock. They need to have a good quality kind of stock. But we are ready to have a low rotation stock, to have a comprehensive offer, especially in the industrial valve sector, and even low rotation stock. There's a question about the value of shares. Are we planning to split the nominal value? So effectively, we did this twice in the past, if I'm right, in 2012 and 2018. So this is perhaps something that can be studied. The only thing is that when we did this, the impact that we wanted was to have more cash in terms of the share. And what we saw was that there wasn't really a very positive effect in terms of cash. It didn't bring up the level. So with respect to the other consequences and shares, we have obstacles linked to our listing that increases automatically. Maybe you want to add something. Yeah, the advantage that might represent is a psychological advantage. And, stock market psychology has a big impact. If it's above 100 euros, it's expensive. If it's below 100 euros, it's more affordable. Having said that, you know that we have a model when it comes to shareholding monitoring, and that is Air Liquide. Hello, Air Liquide. Air Liquide is a lot higher than 100 euros. It's even gone over 150 euros, I believe. And yet, Air Liquide hasn't, it's still got its individual shareholders. So this is something that we need to think about. If we do it, we will put forward this resolution to the General Assembly, and they will decide whether it's suitable or not. For US shareholders, it doesn't really change much. You have 100 shares one day and maybe 200 the next day. The value of that asset will not change. Another question. What products have been most impacted in terms of procurement? It's a bit complicated to answer that question. Well, let me try and answer without being too specific, because we're very transparent, as you know. We don't want to give out too much information to our competitors either, but obviously we're talking about a third of our purchases. All of our products from China are in difficulty, especially some products for the DIY market, because over the past few months there have been some considerable increases, even if things have calmed down over the past few months. For some of our products sold in DIY shops, the increases were really quite unusual. And that really did add a lot of tension to the whole manufacturing and logistics chain. So that's what I can say about the subject. Now, I can say that we are used to having products, you know, we've got a certain depth, and when we have a product that is of Asian origin, we know that we can have a product of a European origin that is very close in terms of use. And, you know, when we talked about our 1,400 references, and we talked about the delivery delays, we cited the fact that we were able to offer alternative products. Now, of course, there's an effort to be made in terms of price, and we're ready to make that effort. So we're not. So the fact that in Asia the situation is becoming more difficult, well, the impact we'll see in the first half year. Our teams are continuing to work on that. You know, we've got the confidence of our Asian suppliers, so we continue our work to try and limit that impact, even if it involves bringing up the finances. So we have assets, we have advantages, you know, with our suppliers. So we've been through all of your questions. Hopefully we haven't tired you out too much. We've been together for over 40 minutes. I suggest, therefore, that we stop the webinar unless there's a last hot topic. The next meeting will be on the annual turnover, and that will be mid-January of next year. And after that, we'll have the group's results in February, the third week of February, with, as you know, very quickly for you, there will be the universal record document published online as of February in French and in English. And perhaps let me just remind you of another date. So we are meeting with our shareholders, our individual shareholders. So we take part usually in the shareholder fair, and we'll be present on the 23rd of November in Paris in the Palais Grognard. So you can have a look on the internet site and you can sign up beforehand, and we'll be very happy to welcome you there. Physically, we'll be on the spot. So we'll be really there in the flesh. So there we are. So that's good news. You know, we signed up to the two events. One has been upheld and the other not. Well, all that remains is to wish you a lovely evening and a great weekend, and see you soon. Yes, have a lovely weekend.